Welcome back. I want to talk about the rules for exponents, and I'm going to break them up into several parts. And the first thing I'll talk about is what happens when you raise something to the 0th power and what happens when you raise it to a negative power. So if I have a to the 0, where a is anything except 0, we know that this always equals 1. So 5 to the 0 equals 1, or 12 to the 0 equals 1, or x to the 0 equals 1. You do have to be a little bit careful with this, though, because you always need to remember that exponents only affect what's right next to it. So if I have 5x to the 0, and there's no parentheses around the 5x, well, that just means that I do x to the 0, and I get my 1, and then I multiply it by 5, so I get 5. Whereas if I had 5x in parentheses to the 0, well, then I am raising the whole thing to the 0, so the whole thing becomes 1. So you have to watch out for that. One thing that usually trips people up is if I do, like, let's say negative 2 to the 0. A lot of people want to say that's 1, but again, the exponent only affects what's right next to it, so 2 to the 0 becomes 1, but that negative didn't get affected. It's still out there in front, so I actually have negative 1. Don't forget rules for exponents. You raise to a power first, unless you have, like you do here, you raise this to a power first. But if you have parentheses, then you would do the parentheses together here. And then multiplying, like I'm doing here when I put a negative out in front, that's multiplying by a negative 1. That gets done after I do the exponents. Okay. Now, another thing that you do with exponents is if you raise them to a negative power, a to the negative n, you can just flip that, write 1 over a to the n. So, for example, 2 to the negative 3, I will take that and flip it, and it becomes just 2 to the 3rd. And 2 to the 3rd, be careful, it's not 6, it's 2 times 2 times 2. It's going to be 1 over 8. Or let's say we have negative 3 to the negative 2. Well, I flip the 3, and I only flip the 3. I leave the negative out in front, and I flip the 3, and now I have 3 squared. So I get 1 over 3 squared, which is 1 over 9, and the negative is still out in front. However, if I have this, negative 3 in parentheses to the negative 2, in that case, I flip the whole thing, including the negative, and I square the whole thing, and I end up with a positive 1/9. So watch out with these exponents. Make sure you're only, whoa, we're scanning something, don't want to do that. Make sure you're only raising to a power what's right next to the exponent unless there are parentheses.